Well, it's Saturday morning. It has been a few days since I've posted anything. No, I haven't been on vacation, just been busy with other things relating to ministry and other projects that I am involved in. And I know it's the 4th of July holiday, and many people are trying to unplug and de stress. And I certainly understand all that. But I wanted to jump on here for just a few moments on Saturday morning, share a cup of coffee with you, and basically talk about some of what's going on right now. Well, of course, the Supreme Court handed out a couple of decisions this week, which have the libloons, basically going out of their minds. Now, one of the decisions they made is a clear victory for the freedom of speech and upholding somebody's religious liberty, religious rights. The web designer who did not want to do a website for a same sex wedding couple. And of course, these things make their way through all of the lower courts. It made its way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court basically said, no, this person does not have to provide this service to a same sex couple. This is huge because this becomes now the legal precedent, and it goes back to how many years ago it was the baker who refused to make a wedding cake for a same sex couple. The baker was sued. It went all the way through the courts, and the baker ended up just shutting their business down. And so now there has been a pushback on it's no longer about the pride community, quote unquote, wanting their rights. It's about the pride community bullying everyone into you will do what we say or we will crush you. They have become bullies. They have become authoritarian. Just look at everything that's going on with the trans agenda right now. There is finally, across this nation and across ideological lines, pushback. We are seeing both the right and the left pushing back on men pretending to be women to play sports, men who are, one day they're 60 years old, the next day, I identify as a 6-year-old girl. No, you're a twisted pervert, and you're obviously some type of closet pedophile, and now you feel that this is the environment that you can come out and be embraced, and people like Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom and the extreme liberal ilk will just embrace that nonsense, and the country has said that's enough. They don't want to see, middle-aged men twerking in front of 8-year-olds at school. The outrage over the trans people invited to the White House and one of them having to show their fake breasts to everybody, and the president saying, oh, that's inappropriate, and they're shocked. They can't believe it. The president who's supposed to stand with them. Oh, these people are degenerate perverts. They've got a mental illness, and the American people have said, that's enough. And it gave SCOTUS enough stones to say on this case regarding creating a website for a same-sex couple that the web designer was able to say no. And, the bottom line is there are, I'm sure, hundreds, if not thousands of web designers who would absolutely have no problem with designing and maintaining a website for a same-sex couple. So it's not like they're being denied a service that they could only get from this one individual, this one entity. So they're not really being denied or stripped of anything. Somebody else will do it, and if worst case scenario, you go on GoDaddy.com and you do your own website. That's what a lot of us do. So but again, we'll take a win where we can get it, and we thank you, Supreme Court, on this one doing the right thing. Now, the one that everybody got excited about on the right was the so-called overturning of affirmative action at college campuses, that no longer can colleges look at race to determine how they want to fill out their student body, that you get there based on the merit of your grades. Now, in its original decision that the Supreme Court came up with, it was a win. And then Chief Justice Roberts got his little hands on it, and he had to make sure that there was a loophole and a way out of it. Harvard University has already jumped on and made it abundantly clear they are going to take advantage of the loophole, that they are not going to follow this Supreme Court decision. This, of course, gives a green light to every liberal state, institution, etc., to not follow the Supreme Court mandate on this. So it's a paper win, but it's not a real win. In other words, a college administrator, a college board that decides they are strictly going to base enrollment on merit, they now have legal protection in doing so. But any of the liberal schools, the Ivy League schools, the Big Ten schools that have been using affirmative action literally for decades now, so that people of actual academic achievement get sidestepped, get bypassed, because we have to have enough, low producing minorities on here. Nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. It's a lot like the victory of the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Nothing is going to change. Any state that wants it can, and many states are ramping up, and they're all coming up with basically legislation that lets you commit infanticide right up to the moment of birth with this newborn. They're proposing that now in the state of Ohio. Ohio, one of the first states in the nation to have the heartbeat law. And now it's in danger of being overturned by the libloons who are buying votes in the state of Ohio, buying support from state congressional leaders, and overturning that and basically making abortion legal right up to the moment of delivery. That's not abortion. That's infanticide. That is the killing of a baby, period. I don't care what your position is on abortion. When you end the life of an infant at birth, that is no longer, quote, the termination of an unwanted pregnancy. That is the termination of an actual human life that is perfectly capable of sustaining itself outside of the womb. I'm sorry, Mama, your rights ended a long time ago on that issue. When you talk about my body, my choice, but the body inside your body has rights too. So this is the same kind of win with the affirmative action. And so it's a win on paper. Colleges that now want to go back to merit-based admissions can. Now, here's my question. How many do you think are going to? Yeah, exactly. And the Biden White House and liberal administrations moving forward will make sure that they have ways of continually of financially rewarding the institutions that don't follow the Supreme Court ruling. They will get the bigger incentives. They will get the bigger portion of student loans and guaranteed grants, etc., etc., etc. So, again, it's this paper win that all conservative media went crazy for. We've done it. We've overturned affirmative action. No, we didn't. But I do want to raise an interesting question. Because liberals constantly talking about the need to make up for the injustices of the past, which is why California is still grappling with affirmative action, reparations. First of all, California wasn't even a slave state, but they're talking about we're going to give the descendants of slaves $1 million each. Boy, talk about a grift waiting to happen. I mean, remember Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, who got to go to college for free because she claimed she was a Cherokee, Navajo, Comanche Indian, whatever tribe it was that she identified with, and that's what her grandma told her, and so she identified as an Indian, and she got free scholarship after free scholarship after free scholarship, only finally, when she was pushed into having a DNA test over it, she is like 1/1,000,000th Native American. I guarantee you that I am probably more Native American than Elizabeth White as Wonder Bread Warren. But of course, that was that. It went away. No marches in the street. Like, how many truly deserving Native Americans were denied an opportunity to go to college because this evil white woman, Elizabeth Warren, stole, misappropriated their culture. Not a peep about that. We'll hear endless nonsense about, Elvis, misappropriated the culture of the black community and never said thank you for all the hits he had. The hits that Elvis had, that he stole black music. You ever done a little history of the black music of the 1940s and 50s? I have. See, one of the other things I do, I am an oldies DJ. I host a 2-hour syndicated weekly oldies radio show called the Sunday Matinee. And we feature 1950s, pre-Beatles, 1960s rock and roll. We even go a little bit back into the late 1940s. I am well versed on black rhythm and blues that became the foundational footprint for rock and roll. And I can tell you that most of the black music of the 1940s and 50s, that rhythm and blues, that jump blues, that was great, and the black artists did a phenomenal job with it, were written by white people. Lieber and Stoller being the biggest. Elvis is being accused constantly by the certain people within black entertainment and the black community. He stole Hound Dog from Big Mama Thornton. No, he recorded his own version of it. And Hound Dog was written by 2 Jewish boys named Lieber and Stoller. I wasn't aware that, rhythm and blues was a big part of the sand culture in Israel. There were many white people who loved rhythm and blues. They recorded it. They wrote it. They performed the instrumentation on it for black artists. So who's misappropriating what? Get over that. So as Elizabeth Warren misappropriated an entire culture, to get her status in college, you go ahead and legalize reparations. How many white people all of a sudden are going to have black ancestry? How many white people all of a sudden are going to figure out a way that, their great Uncle Rufus was a slave and they're entitled to a little bit of that reparation money? You understand? When you do these kind of things, you're just setting up more grift. And why do we never talk about the history of slavery in South America? Oh, did I just go there? Yeah, why not? Saturday. You do know that the slave ships weren't just dropping off dark-skinned natives from Africa here in the United States. That the Spaniards were bringing them over into South America. Bump, ba-dum, bump. And the actual inhabitants of South America, the Mexicans, the Guatemalans, they weren't really all that keen on the inhabitants of those slave ships any more than the so-called white redneck racists of North America. Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. But liberals, in their oversimplification of everything, so that they can try to vilify white Anglo-Saxon conservative Christian men. Now, I remember as a kid, you couldn't say the word colored anymore. You don't call them colored people, they're black people. Okay, we started calling them black people. Now they're people of color. Because the liberals want to put in a way to try to drive a wedge and push back on conservatives and make all Republicans look evil and racist. They want, the Mexicans, or I should say the illegal invaders coming through our southern border, sharing in the same plight as black Americans so that they will unify their vote for Democrats. When in reality, people from South America are just as prejudiced as white redneck hillbillies. Now, that's the truth. Do a little history on that. But that's a problem. We Americans don't tend to study any history beyond our own, which is why you've got libloons, leftists, and even the Hollyweird, all in on what's happening in Ukraine, and we've got to thwart off Russia. Do you understand that in Europe there have been, over the past 1,000 years, hundreds of these type of civil wars? See, because racism and prejudice isn't just about white versus black. Oh no. Remember that failed experiment called Czechoslovakia? Well, the Czechs didn't like the Slovaks, and the Slovaks didn't like the Czechs, so that was doomed to fail. Every time Europe has tried to have one of these unified unions of different peoples under a state government, every single time it has failed. It's why the Soviet Union failed. Do you even know what Ukraine means? And its proper pronunciation, and I'm not real good at this. I'm about to butcher it, I'm sure, but it's Ukrainia. And it means the edge, the peripheral. That the inhabitants of Ukraine were Russian, but they were a lot of non-Russians. It was the edge, and no Tsar, Emperor of Russia, was ever able to unify that group of people. So my point is, we got no business being there. We've got no business supporting a proxy war there. This idea that we're just going to march around the world and thwart our will, our imperialism on everyone, was birthed out of the Cold War, that at the end of World War II, I understand why we had to leave some occupational forces in Japan. Otherwise, the Soviets would have gone in and colonized Japan. So I understood why we did that. But the fact that we have 700 military bases all around the world pushing our will, our agenda, has not worked. We have upset and we have created more war, and the military-industrial complex, which we were warned about by Dwight Eisenhower, is where all the money is made, which is the real reason Washington hates Donald Trump. He upset the money. He upset the money flow. We have no business in Ukraine other than Biden having to pay back all of the bribe for influence money he was given. And now you have Zelensky saying there'll be no elections in Ukraine till the war is over. So how motivated is he going to be to end this war as he declares himself supreme leader and dictator? Oh, but Hollywood's all for that. Can you imagine if, while Donald Trump was president, some type of hostility had broken out? And he had said there'll be no election until the war is over? Can you imagine what would have happened? Well, not only did no hostility break out, but the one president that they constantly accused of being a fascist and a dictator did everything he could to end wars, not start any new military engagements. And you had Nancy Pelosi working with the leadership at the Pentagon, doing everything they could, literally, to disobey the orders of the commander-in-chief, to not draw down troops in Iraq, in Afghanistan, to ignore the direct orders of the President of the United States. And who is it that's being indicted for treason because he took a few papers that every president has done? But while we feign all of this plight on Black America, and we have to stand with the people of color, let's remember that the people of color are prejudiced against each other. Let's tell the whole story. Or as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. As for me, in a couple of days, I am going to celebrate those white guys that were being told by a certain sect of our people were racist, but yet they had a dream and a vision and created a nation. A nation that up until a few years ago was one of the most blessed nations on the planet and achieved so much good in inventions and advancement of the human race. And now it is a third world toilet. corrupt banana republic style governance, police state. But I'm still going to celebrate those founders and enjoy waving the red, white, and blue, not for what it is, but for what it was supposed to stand for. And watch some fireworks and celebrate that there is hope that we could be free again.